What is up, everybody? I am your host, Shane Mallory, joined by my co-host,
Ricky DaCosta.
And tell the folks what time it is.
Run it back.
Run it back. Listen, folks, I apologize if my voice sounds a little bit hoarse, a little bit under the weather today, but the show must go on. We power through. My co-host suggested he'd come in and do the opening anthem, but I was just like, listen, man, we got to give the people what they want. They want to hear.
Hey, listen, put me in, coach.
Even
I'm
if it's
ready.
not
I'm ready.
100%.
What is up, everybody?
Let us know in a poll every once in a while if one of us is, if I'm not feeling that great, maybe we give Mr. DaCosta a shot to give us that intro.
Listen, I'm ready.
But listen, we got a jam-packed show, but before we get into all the content, beautiful people, you know exactly what I'm going to say. Please like, comment, and subscribe. We are looking for those 5-star reviews on all major platforms. We're growing across the board. We're growing on Instagram. We're growing on YouTube. But again, we can always grow more, so we can't do that without you guys. Please keep up that positive feedback. Oh, and again, this is just a show, guys. I'm not an expert. Neither is he. This is just us spitballing, talking our opinions, about sports. At the end of the day, we love interacting with you guys, but let's just try to keep it positive, all right?
Listen, show up in the comments, right? Listen, at the end of the day, right, if you got that smoke, bring it in the comments. Hey, I'm okay with it. You know what I mean? So listen, if it's hate, if it's love, it's all good. At the end of the day, we're trying to interact. Of course, we love the positive feedback, but listen, our audience, our fans are standing up for us,
Yeah,
so
listen.
So if the haters want to come through, man. We got a nice little following and it's growing.
We got some supporters, though.
Exactly.
So watch out, man.
You know what I mean?
Watch out. The Run It Back gang, man, ain't going to let us go down without a fight.
Amen, amen. And we're going to have a live for you guys, definitely.
Yeah.
Basketball season or
just
something.
Just talking about
that. March Madness. We're going to figure out something to definitely be live, be interactive. And listen, you're going to get me in the comments real soon, and I'll throw that smoke too.
Ooh, all right. Well, listen, let's just get right into this because I know you and I are very excited.
I got a lot to say. Good thing you're sick because I got a lot to say.
Yeah, well, maybe I'm going to let you lead off and then maybe I'll listen
Fire
and I'll
away.
react and respond. So, big news. Obviously, you all know we are Giants fans, okay? Unfortunately, it is somewhat the end of an era. Saquon Barkley is no longer a New York Football Giant. He's an Eagle. He is a Philadelphia Eagle. What is going on? Are we living in a parallel universe? Listen, I think this is probably upsetting for a lot of Giants fans. I was a big Saquon Barkley fan, and even though he goes to the Eagles, I'm honestly not mad for him. Listen, take care of yourself in this world. Go get your money. Go get your bag. And hopefully, you know what? It's hard because I can't really root for him to win now because he's in a division rival.
That is a big problem. That is a big problem. So if I do have any beef with Saquon, you decide to go to the Eagles, and now I can't root for you.
Yeah.
If you went to the Texans, if you went anywhere else, I could still root for him. Obviously minus Dallas, of course. But that definitely makes it tough. Yeah, he was definitely not going to the Commanders.
Listen, I'm going to miss him, obviously. You and I think, have somewhat differing thoughts overall on the direction
of
the Giants.
Pissed.
But I'm going to – all right, well, listen, I'm going to – throw it over to you. Give me your thoughts on the state of the New York Giants right now. Go ahead.
Okay, let me make sure. I'm going to qualify my comments, right? We picked up 2 offensive guards, right? And we made a hell of a trade.
One guard, a tackle.
Yes, yeah,
one guard,
one tackle. And we made a huge trade to pick up Brian Burns, of which we made out, right? We traded a second and a fifth.
We already had 2 seconds. So we
traded Leonard Williams. So we basically flipped Leonard Williams for a younger, better.
Too.
And it's from next year.
Yep.
So we basically flipped Leonard Williams for Brian Burns, same trade package. So from that standpoint, phenomenal.
And a 5th rounder a year down the road.
Phenomenal.
You still got a second.
Exactly. So. But here's my argument now. Here's my issue, I'll say, right? So we got a great pass rush now, right? Great pass rush.
Love it.
Right? We got good linebackers.
Love it.
Right? We got solid DBs. So you're saying we're going to lose games 6 to 17?
Oh, boy.
Right? Because who's throwing the ball? Who's running the ball? Who's catching the ball? Right? In a offensive league, let's jump and look at what the Tennessee Titans did. They just signed Calvin Ridley. They already had D-Hop. They got Trey Burks, and they got Spears in the backfield. That's an elite weapon cast of characters.
Sure.
Now, yes, football is built in the trenches.
Yes.
Right?
That's how the Giants win Super Bowls, too. Especially with elite pass rushes.
And the guy named Eli Manning.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, didn't we have like a Tiki Barber? Didn't we have like a strong
Tiki Barber never won a Super Bowl.
Oh, yeah. No,
Remember,
you're right.
he retired
Who's
the
running back
year
at the time?
before.
Who's running back?
I can't remember who took over for Tiki, but I want to say Brandon Jacobs might have been the sole guy that first year. And then the second Super Bowl, it was Earth, Wind, and Fire, baby.
Yeah.
Brandon Jacobs, Derrick Ward, and Ahmad Bradshaw.
Well, listen, we had the NASCAR package and we had Eli Manning, right?
Yes.
Like that was enough. Let's just leave it at that,
Yeah.
right? Let's leave it at that. What in the world do we have now, right? Our offensive line has been inconsistent, and even if you finally fixed it, who's running the ball and who's throwing the ball? Daniel Jones is broken, right? He's broken, right? He was overdrafted, he was overpaid, and now he's not even worth showing up on the field because he's not available, right? So my problem is not that Saquon Barkley was drafted high. My problem is not that he went to the Eagles. At the end of the day, we paid Daniel Jones $160 million, 80, 90 over 2 years, and we couldn't find $2 million a year with a salary cap that went up $30 million to lock down Saquon Barkley. Let's talk about culture. Let's talk about heart. What are the New York Giants, right? In the sense that we keep none of our own, right? Saquon Barkley represented 75% of our offensive production.
Besides quarterbacks, apparently.
Jesus, right? So Saquon Barkley, previous year, 75% of our production.
McKinney gone too.
And we decided to give Daniel Jones, right, $160 million contract. We can't find $2 million for Saquon Barkley. Like, at the end of the day, I want you to understand, Gabe Davis, right, got 3 years, about $35 million.
Something like that, yeah.
The exact same contract as Saquon Barkley.
Sure.
Saquon Barkley is arguably a top 5 running back in this league right now.
Sure.
And he's 27 years old.
Little injury prone, but yes.
Now, here's the thing. Fine. That is people's argument. How is his career any different than CMC? Look at those 2 career paths, right? They had 2 breakout years, right? Super elite. And then they had 4 years of a mixture of injuries and somewhat limited production.
I still think CMC played more than Saquon, but I hear you. I hear your comparison. I hear it.
Right. Instead of 2 and 4, 3 and 4, right? Like it's very, very similar. Like fine, we could give CMC 1 more year. But look at what happened, right? He went to the 49ers. He went to a system that he did not have to do every single thing. And guess where they ended up? In the Super Bowl. Now, granted, they lost, right? Now, fast forward. It's not only about losing the heart of our team, right? Because this goes back even deeper. Now, call me upset over this.
I think you're more upset about previous years' negotiations.
Listen, I'm upset overall. We did the same thing with Beckham. We got him out there. We got rid of our offensive talent. We got rid of our weapon, right? That homegrown, that we've drafted, that we've brought in, right, to build a culture. Not everyone can play in New York. So all of a sudden, when you have a weapon, you have a top 5, top 7 player in this league, you got to keep them. Right? Now, what makes it worse, he goes to the Philadelphia Eagle. The argument was that nobody wanted running backs. Running backs are a dime a dozen. They're overrated. Don't pay them. Right? Okay, so what happened? Barkley, Henry, Josh Jacobs, right? Hell, Aaron Jones that's 30 years old. All these guys, wash, don't pay him. Guess what? They all got
paid.
Mixon,
too.
Joe Mixon, of which he got done dirty. We'll talk about him in a second. So now, right, Saquon goes to our competitor. First of all, the Texans were giving him about 10.5, 11 million a year, right? So the Eagles came above that, gave him 3 years, 37 with a 4th option to make it up to 48 million, basically 12 million a year. That's what he was. That represents 4% of the salary cap this year. That's all it took to keep a homegrown player face of our organization. And instead, our competitor picked him up, and now it is Jalen Hurts, it is A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Saquon Barkley behind a top 5 offensive line.
They did just lose the best center in the league, though. So the offensive line could take a little bit of a step
They
back.
were number 1, and now they're going to be top 5 because they lost Kelsey. Right? So my problem is if our competition, our direct competitor can recognize that he's an elite weapon, if they can recognize, not only is it going to be beneficial to us to pick him up, but it's going to do further damage to the Giants.
Okay.
Right? And my opinion, now granted, they haven't re-signed Dak, so they may not have been able to afford him, but you can't tell me that the Cowboys weren't also interested. Right? But they haven't fixed their own problems to make the room
They're about
to
to
get him.
sink money into 3 different players, too. That's going to be significantly hindering to their salary cap.
But my whole thing was, a part of it is, even if you just look at this cycle, a lot of players switch teams within division because the divisional
opponents more of it
opponents
than normal, sure.
recognize that their talent. And the Giants had it inside the house. The Giants could have gave a 3-year, $36 million contract to Barkley a year ago. Sure. And he would already be 1 year into it, and it would be 2 years left. That's the problem. Sure. That's the problem. That's my biggest issue with it. Yes, I'm glad we picked up a guard and a tackle. Yes, I love the Burns trade. But you got to score points to win.
Fair. Yeah.
Right? And again, look at who now we have to play Saquon and that offensive staff.
Yes.
We haven't proven that we could beat the Cowboys.
Okay.
Right? And now the Commanders are about to have.
But that was with Saquon on the team. We couldn't beat the Cowboys with Saquon on the team.
So what do you think we're going to do without him?
I don't know. I guess we're going to have to see.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't we lose like 42-3? 43-6?
The first game, I don't even know if the Giants scored a point. I don't think the Giants scored a point.
I don't think
the first one. The first one.
We didn't score 7 points. Right?
The first game.
So that means
I can't remember the second game.
So your argument is that our offense was bad with Saquon.
It's just that they weren't winning games even with Saquon.
So how bad is it going to be without him?
Well, again, we're going to have to see a lot with the Giants. And listen, I hear everything that you say. It really stinks that they had to let Saquon go. A lot of this has to do with the Jones contract from the previous year and them not trying to jump on franchise tagging Jones and then signing Saquon. All right. Now that they got to this year, the Giants looked at it and they go, and this is something is just the NFL is kind of telling you in general right now. Look at how many 40-0. Yeah, exactly. So that first game, it was bad. I remember the Cowboys were just launching them all around the field.
And to finish my point, look at the Commanders' offensive weapons, right? So you give them a halfway decent quarterback.
Sure.
Now, granted, we fairly beat up on them, right? Yep. So that's going to be a competitive game. We might split it with them. But from an offensive standpoint and defensive standpoint, a roster standpoint, they got a better roster than us right now. So we got the worst roster in the division. Well, that's my problem. And to cut you off, second thing, what I look at is that the Giants keep compounding mistakes, right? The Daniel Jones not extending his 5th-year option, mistake.
I agree.
Not franchising, tagging him, mistake.
Not extending the 5th-year option only to then double down and then offer him a minimum next 2 years. You should have just given him the 5th because you wouldn't have been in all this situation. Especially with
him the 5th. Tag him. You needed more information. You gave him $160 million and he only threw 15 touchdowns
in a 17-game season.
I hear Barkley had 12, 11, and one's worth $40 million. The other one's not worth 12.
Sure,
doesn't make any sense.
Here's the thing, though, right? And I really do like Saquon. And again, even though he's on the Eagles, like good for him now that he at least has a chance to go and win and compete at least for the next couple of years. But in the long term, the league is kind of telling you that running back is being devalued. Okay, the fact that guys like Jacobs, Henry, and Saquon were all out on the free agency market, it just shows you now the teams are sitting there going, we don't necessarily need an elite back to go and win a championship. Also, if you look at the last 10 years, okay, going to the Super Bowl, most of the winners, they've had solid running backs, good running backs, but again, the running back position, while I love it, it's one of my favorite positions to watch, it is not a foundational piece to winning a championship. You could argue that the running back might be the 9th, 10th, or 11th most important position on your team. Like there are just other foundational parts that are significantly more important. Now, package that with the fact that
I strongly disagree with that. 9,
well, listen,
10.
All I'm saying is what's more important, quarterback or running back? Quarterback, right? A number 1 top flight receiver or running back. I'm going with the top flight receiver. Okay. A left tackle, more important. An edge rusher, more important. A shutdown corner, more important. So I mean that's 5, 6 right there. But again, I would rather have great overall offensive and defensive lines than I would just a great running back with not any of those
So
supplemental
here's
pieces.
my issue, right? Like, again, if we had Wink Martindale, if we had a competent quarterback, right, like I think things would really be different, okay? My thing is we suck on offense, plain and simple. We suck on offense. We can't score the ball, right? You have a top 5 running back, right? At the end of the day, yes, maybe the average running back might be 6th, 7th best, probably around 5th.
Sure.
At the end of the day, we have a top 5 running back in the league on our team.
And
okay?
they still weren't winning.
That represents 75%. First of all, people say that. It's not the running back's job, right? How can people just say Daniel Jones isn't winning?
But you're always
think about
a guy.
think about what you're doing right now.
But you're
You are
always a
blaming
guy.
Saquon
I'm
Barkley
not blaming
for
Saquon.
not having more wins, and he hasn't had a freaking
No,
quarterback.
I'm not blaming Saquon. What I'm saying is that the running back position does not correlate to winning football games. You need the other
Because you
prerequisite pieces in
continue to
place.
make the same mistake with the quarterback. So instead of dumping him and
Well,
starting
it's not
over,
just a
we
quarterback
could
with
have
the
done better
Giants.
with Baker Mayfield.
Here's what I'll say though: the Giants have been running from this
Do
problem.
you
with the
Do you
offensive
realize
line
Daniel
forever.
Jones got paid more than Baker Mayfield?
Yes. Yes, I
Do you realize
and,
that?
Listen, and the Bucks are smart. Listen, you will get no argument from me that the Giants messed up on the contract to Jones. All right, they did. It's clear. Okay, but now they're trying to clean up all those mistakes. Daniel Jones after this season is gone. And I think something that maybe you're somewhat failing to see. First of all, a couple of shout outs. First of all, John Runyon Jr., welcome to the team. Can't wait to see what you're going to do at left guard. And my man, Jermaine Illuminor, right tackle. I know you, buddy. You played at St. Joseph's of Montvale. I remember you because you wrestled heavyweight for their team as well. And you and I did a couple of takedowns in the wrestling room. Don't worry, man. I'm not going to tell the folks how that wrestling match went, all right? You were a young bull, okay? I was an old, right out of college, vet. So, I mean, I'm happy to have
talking
you
a little
on the
trash.
job.
You saying you
Well,
whooped a
I'm just
little
saying,
AWS?
If we ever could get him on the podcast, I'd be more. I think he would actually remember. Oh yeah, I remember you in that Hanover Park wrestling room. You
Hey,
know what?
production, we gotta
Yeah,
send
so a little
that
shout
DM.
out to Jermaine Illuminor. Listen, welcome back home, buddy. Though I can't wait to see you go out and improve this offensive line. We need it. All right, Brian Burns. Super excited to watch you and Kayvon Thibodeau be cornerstone pass rushers for this team for years to come. The Giants are a rebuilding team. They messed up in the first place when they let's not even go with whether they should or should not have drafted Barkley. You feel one way about it. I feel like they were in a position where they had just come off of a 5-win season. A 5-win team should not be drafting a star running back. They went from 5 wins to 6 wins the following year. And having Barkley hasn't equated to more years. Not blaming him, just simply stating that the running back position doesn't necessarily lead to wins. Look at CMC in Carolina. Look at Derrick Henry in Tennessee. When Tennessee was winning games, it's because they had a good defense. They had other things around too as well. And then on top of that, they had a bruising back in a Derrick Henry. I think the Giants are really trying to go back and rebuild this thing the right way. And this is the one part that I think you're missing. Jones is done after this year. So you're going to sink your money into Burns. You're going to sink your money now into the offensive line. In time, you're going to probably go sign someone like Kayvon Thibodeau and Banks. All your money, okay, is now going towards that. Now you have a chance to reset that salary cap because you're going to be drafting a new quarterback either this year or next year, or possibly a legit number one pass catching option, which you and I have both talked about we need, all right? So pay those other foundational pieces, and there's 2 ways to do this thing, right? We just saw 2 teams in the Super Bowl do this. You got the Chiefs, who put all their money into their quarterback now, but they've drafted well around them. So all the money one side, keep it young and controllable contracts on the other sides. The 49ers is the reverse. Pay all the other supplemental pieces around.
Amen.
Get yourself a cheap quarterback.
Amen.
The Giants are about to do that. And either this year, they either
No,
get...
no, wait,
they-
no,
hold on.
whoa,
They
no
either-
way. We are not closer to the 49ers.
No.
Structure
No,
of what you just said.
I'm just talking about how they are going about working the salary cap. This is how you win now today.
No.
You either have great pieces that you pay all around the quarterback, and you have a young quarterback, a la the Houston Texans and what they're doing, who we'll talk about later, or you're the Kansas City Chiefs. You literally have God playing at quarterback, and then you draft all those other pieces around him.
Listen, I still don't quite understand, because what I'm yelling about is that I would rather have the 49ers set up. I would keep Saquon Barkley. I would go draft Rome Odunze, and then I would have brought in...
But you couldn't have kept Saquon and made all these moves.
Maybe not all of them. So
Yeah.
maybe we would have to lose, probably the offensive tackle that we just brought in, right?
Correct.
But at the end of the day, right, you're bringing running. You get, and here's the thing: you play with the
Luminor
cap,
to me too
right?
is going to be the guy.
Listen, I
Out
don't
of those
disagree with
two,
that, but
but-
my thing is, right, you play with the cap, you add some void years, right? You really structure the money.
Sure.
You maybe give a little bit more bonus to Saquon now to lower his cap number, throughout the season. You really play with the number. You restructure a couple people.
We got to stop
But
trying
at
to
the
win
end of
on
the day-
credit. We got to clear our books.
We're not winning at
We gotta
all
clear
on
our
anything.
books.
Credit
I
or
know.
cash.
I
right?
know.
So, but my whole thing is if we had signed Saquon, we drafted Odunze, and we brought in a veteran receiver. Yes, I would have loved Calvin Ridley. He was too much money. If we went out or we traded and got a T. Higgins, right? So now let's say
I want the number one pass catcher for the record.
So now let's
especially
say-
if a quarterback doesn't fall.
All right, let's say this is all we did. We kept Saquon Barkley.
Yep.
We kept the Burns trade, and then with our second and third round pick, we go get T. Higgins. Right now, all of a
If
sudden,
that would get you T. Higgins, but if that would get you.
fine,
He's a young
2
receiver.
seconds,
Yeah.
right? Whatever the
Well,
case.
go ahead.
Right, and then we still draft Rome Odunze. Now we are the 49ers. 2 elite receivers.
You still don't have a good quarterback, though.
But again, Tyrod Taylor, Baker, we can go.
You just called me crazy a couple minutes ago for saying we were like the 49ers, and now you just played a scenario where we're just like the 49ers.
And now we are just a Brock Purdy away, baby.
Oh, yeah.
Listen.
I don't know if we're a Brock Purdy away. This is one of the
We're
worst
not even a
offensive lines in
Josh
the
Allen.
league.
We're not even like a Baker away. Like I don't see the vision. We still have time. The point is, we still have time. I don't see the vision. And then secondly, a part of my argument, we just made the Philadelphia Eagles more dangerous.
Ooh.
So our path to get to the playoffs is that much harder. Dallas and Philly are significantly better than us, right? And Philly has smartened up. They got themselves a true OC. They got themselves a true DC. And they went out, got CJ Gardner. They got a pass rusher in Huff. They picked up Barkley. Now, their bill is coming due, right? Because they're going to have to make a decision on A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. But they're going all in for one more push at a Super Bowl, and they have certain positions already locked down. All I'm trying to say is that I would have rather a similar structure where we have elite talent, right? And we're cheaper on defense. We're cheaper on defense because we're going to have to pay Thibodeau soon.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
but there's only going to be more money clearing after this year, too, once you get Daniel Jones off the books.
All I'm saying is I feel like we're closer.
Now you're going to have a quarterback on a rookie contract either this year or next year.
Listen, we're closer to the Steelers, and we don't have a Mike Tomlin that's going to end up making sure we have a winning record every year.
I'm curious to see where the Giants are going to end up being at this season, but I like what they did in free agency, obviously, more than you do overall. Again, I think it stinks that you lose Saquon. It's so funny because you're very down on the Giants right now and you're high on the Eagles, and I'm the opposite. Now, here's what I'll say. On paper, Eagles offense looks very dangerous. But that wasn't the Eagles' issue last year. They were one of the worst defenses in the league last year, especially against the pass. So instead of taking all that money, especially with the increased cap, going after a guy like, I don't know, a L'Jarius Sneed right now who's on a tag and possibly going to get traded or moved. But instead, you spend or allocate the majority of your resources on Saquon. So I guess what the Eagles...
Did they, though? They picked, like I said, they picked up CJ Gardner, right?
Yeah, but he's way cheaper than what L'Jarius Sneed would have been.
Absolutely. But they picked him up for nothing. They didn't have to lose any draft picks. And remember this, Vic Fangio.
Yeah, why'd they pick him up for nothing? Don't you got to ask that? He just came from one of the worst pass defenses in the league last year in the Lions.
But listen, Vic Fangio,
sure.
right? And first of all,
Good
CJ Gardner was probably the best quarterback they had. Right? He turned the Miami Dolphins defense in one season into a top 10 defense. A top 10 defense, right? So with competent...
I think Christian Wilkins had something to do with that, too.
Listen,
I'm just saying.
Wherever Vic Fangio goes... Right?
You're talking about Vic. I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about the cornerback.
No, sorry. I'm talking about the coach. Yeah, Vic Fangio, the coach, right?
My bad.
Wherever he goes, he turns his defense into a top 10, top 12 team. Right? So now if you're telling me that Philadelphia defense is going to be a top 12 defense,
we'll see.
Right? With a top 5 offense. Now, here's the thing.
It did bring in the defensive end Huff.
Right, they brought in Huff.
I still don't love.
A lot of people are saying, well, the Eagles weren't running wasn't their issue. Well, they never had a weapon like Saquon.
That's fair.
They never had a weapon like
DeAndre
Saquon.
Swift was good.
Right?
He's not
so
Saquon.
We don't
but-
got to worry about the tush push no more. Jalen Hurts don't got to worry about the tush push. You could just hand it off to Saquon.
Oh,
Now,
I agree with that.
Right?
But
And
2 years ago, they made it to the Super Bowl, and they didn't have any stud at running back. They almost did a running back by committee.
so what are they going to do now with Saquon when they run that option play?
We'll see. We'll
Right?
see.
Like, that's my argument.
I don't think
right?
the running, again, I still think the rush attack can be very dangerous. Don't get me wrong. And you bring up a great point with the read option. But losing Kelsey is not losing nothing.
Again, and
You're
I
either
don't
putting
disagree.
a backup center in there now, or you're going to take a guard and move him to center.
They'll probably draft one, but everyone else in that line is veteran. So my only argument is that you can't double AJ and you can't put 8 men in the box against Saquon now. And you got to remember, Jalen Hurts still can run. So again, prior there was no running back on the Eagles that you had to game plan for. Now you have to game plan for Jalen Hurts. You have to game plan for Saquon Barkley.
Sure.
And you have to game plan for A.J. Brown.
Yeah, but you just bring
So
up an
pick
interesting...
your poison.
But you bring up an interesting point. A.J. Brown seems to get very frustrated when he doesn't get the ball a lot. Well, if you bring in a guy like Saquon Barkley, is he going to be getting the ball more or less? Because it looks like you're now maybe trying to go to a little bit more run-based heavy attack when you bring in a guy like Saquon.
Winning cures all.
Well, we'll see if they win. I would say this about the Eagles, a move like that, you better be in the Super Bowl next year, because if you're not, you got a whole lot of issues in that following year in terms of money.
Listen, they're looking real good, and partly why they're looking real good is because Dallas hasn't done anything. Dallas is hamstruck by
Look at you,
a
master of the
60
segue. You're like a regular Master Yoda over here.
They're hamstruck by paying Dak $60 million. And their mistake, if they go out and pay Dak Prescott $300 million over the next 5 years, that's going to be their big mistake.
Dallas,
right?
where you at, man? Where's all the noise? Not one free agency move? I'm shocked.
Listen, I am shocked as well, right? But the problem is that contract is hampering them now. They should have just restructured it. They would have freed up $18 million.
Sure.
But here's what hopefully Cowboy fans realize with Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott.
And maybe a quiet offseason is a good thing for them.
No. Dak Prescott.
You see, when they're loud, it always ends up blowing up in their face. You know what I'm saying? I'm just saying, sometimes that culture thing, maybe like the old Teddy Roosevelt phrase, speak softly and carry a big stick, man.
But you know what? But they're not doing anything. They lost out on McQueen, right? Like, they needed linebacker help. Dallas could have really used him. Now, I don't think McQueen
The Eagles could have used him.
The Eagles could have used him. But now, I don't think McQueen would have wanted to go to the Cowboys and all that drama, glamour, and excitement.
Yeah,
so I don't
especially
think
coming
he
from an
would have,
organization like
exactly.
Baltimore.
So I don't think
Sure.
he would have wanted to go
Buttoned-up
there. But
organization.
that is the type of player that the Dallas Cowboys needed.
Yeah.
Right? And so it would have made a huge difference, especially from a leadership standpoint. We're hearing a lot about Dallas and noise and culture, right? Like, McQueen could have helped solve a lot of that.
Yeah.
Right? And again, if they freed up that $18 million with Dak, that's the player that they could have had. So now I definitely think Dallas is taking a step back, but are they better than the Giants? Absolutely.
I do like the Zimmer signing, though, at defensive coordinator for them. I do feel like he's a veteran. He's a great defensive coordinator, too. They got to beef up on their interior. I assume they're going to probably go. I think Dallas is going to be very draft heavy this year in terms of how they try to improve their team.
I just think there were simple moves that they missed out. They could have used a John Runyon. Right? There's a lot of little things that they could have done to really solidify themselves, and they didn't do any of that. So I think Dallas is going to take a step back. I think Washington is going to take a step forward.
Philly on paper definitely has to be the favorite.
Philly is definitely on paper. And mind you, they still have the draft, and they've proven to be masters at the draft.
They are
right
good
now.
at the draft.
And Philly is getting younger, and as some of the older players are exiting, they are set up nicely for success. So it hurts me. It hurts me because yes, we finally made the right moves, fixing the offensive line, bringing in more defensive talent, but we have no skilled
The defense
weapons.
was good last year for the Giants.
We have no elite skill weapons. That's simply, we have no true number one receiver.
Yeah.
Right?
See what
We
happens in
have
the draft.
no number one running back. We have no number one quarterback. So what does it matter to have a great offensive line if there's no one to protect?
Listen,
No one to properly throw the ball.
you can always compete when you're good at the line of scrimmage. I'm going to leave with this because we only have a little bit of time left. The Commanders, a lot of this is going to be predicated on who they draft at quarterback, but I will tell you something I like that they did. Bringing in guys like a running back in Austin Eckler and a middle linebacker like Bobby Wagner, those are pros. Eckler will help a young quarterback have some good check down, easy pass completions, just to get his confidence going. And a guy like Bobby Wagner, while he's older, at least when you're setting up new coach, new culture, whatnot, you got a leader like that, a former winner who goes in and establishes at least, hey, this is the culture we want for this team going forward. So I'm curious to see what the Commanders do in the draft, because that's really going to give me the full evaluation on where they'll be.
Yeah.
But listen, folks, that is all the time we have for segment number 1. But don't go anywhere. We'll have a lot more NFL news when we come back and run it back on segment number 2. What is up, everybody? I am your host, Shane Mallory, joined once again by my co-host, Mr. DaCosta, and this is segment number 2 of Run It Back. And you know what it is, man. It's this free agency frenzy, okay? We're going to continue right here. Lot of other crazy moves, but the one I really want to start off with, because if you remember, we go back, I don't know exactly what episode it was, but shortly after Kirk Cousins got hurt in the Minnesota Vikings, we had an episode somewhere, I want to say like mid-season, where we were talking about like possible free agency destinations, like where guys could end up. And we started talking about Kirk Cousins because we were pretty sure the Vikings probably weren't going to re-sign him. We weren't 100% sure, but it seemed like it was trending in that direction.
Yeah.
And I remember, it's on the tape. That's why I don't want to just sit there and say like I'm pulling it out of my ass. Like I did actually say this. I said, you know where I think would be a really interesting place to see Kirk Cousins go? The Atlanta Falcons. And there he ends up. Now, when you look at the Falcons this past year, they were competitive inside that division. Pretty good defense, okay? And they were competitive with Desmond Ridder at quarterback. Now, this is no disrespect to Desmond Ridder, but let's just keep a spade a spade. Not a starting caliber quarterback inside the NFL. And they were literally, on the final day of the season, still playing with a shot to make it to the playoffs and win that division. Well, now you bring in a veteran quarterback who's a very good quarterback, I might add. I would say that Kirk Cousins could be argued as a top 10 quarterback right now as it currently stands. You bring him in, a vet who's proven that he can produce and put up fantastic numbers. Okay, you put him in with all these young guys, Bijan Robinson, okay? Kyle Pitts, who it seems like the Falcons have had trouble trying to unlock, all right? Well, maybe now Kirk Cousins can go and unlock a guy like that. Drake London. I don't know, like their offensive line could probably use a little bit of improvement, but I think they can go now.
They got a good left tackle.
They do have a good left tackle, but they can now go and figure it out through, the draft too as well. They also bring in Raheem Morris, a very good defensive coach, to a defense that performed fairly well last year. So when I'm looking at the Falcons right now, I think they crushed it in terms of the move they could have made, because if you were looking at the Falcons after this season, what's the biggest need? A veteran or a good, strong quarterback to get the most out of this offense. Well, to me, I think they got that in Kirk Cousins. They bring in a new head coach. I think on paper, a lot of people will probably pick the Bucs to still repeat next year, especially because we'll talk about this, they retained Baker. They obviously kept Mike Evans too as well. Only right probably to give them the nod. But I really like the Falcons, especially in this weaker NFC South. But give me your thoughts on the move.
Listen, I think, Kirk Cousins to Atlanta makes a lot of sense. The Minnesota Vikings run a similar system.
Sure.
So that's the same system as the 49ers, the Rams, Minnesota, and now the Falcons. And so for him, it's an easy transition. He ended up getting $98 million guaranteed on a $180 million contract.
Yep.
So for a 37-year-old quarterback. So I do think that was
and he is coming off the Achilles injury. So
now he's coming off of an Achilles injury. So I do have to make a couple of assumptions. One, that the Falcons did their due diligence, right? And
he looked great in the workouts
fully
that I've
healthy,
seen. Yeah.
right? And ultimately, he's not a very mobile quarterback. So the Achilles
never really
shouldn't
part
be
of
an
his
issue.
game. Sure.
I went through an Achilles injury, and what ends up happening is you end up also focusing on the one that is healthy and strengthening both of them.
Sure.
And so
Tyler Algier, that's the other guy I was thinking about, the other running back.
Gotcha. Really good.
Yep.
And so
They lost Jonnu Smith, actually. But.
Not going to hurt anything. Yeah. So, but their weapons are nice. They did bring in Darnell Mooney, right? And so that was a really good pickup. So again, you think about that trio, right, with the running back between London, Mooney now,
Pitts, Bijan, little Tyler. They got a little 1-2 punch at the running back position.
Dangerous cast with a strong defense. I agree. That's what I was looking for the Giants to do. But listen, I think Kirk is going to be the best quarterback in that division. I think he's going to propel them to win 9-10 games, potentially win the division. What type of noise are they going to make in the playoffs?
Sure.
Right? Who knows? But ultimately, Raheem Morris was a head coach 10 plus years ago, and he
For the
didn't
Bucks, right?
for the Bucks.
Jersey
he
native,
did
too.
not
Irvington
have-
guy.
Yep, did not have a quarterback.
Yep.
So they went all in getting Cousins so they could have stability at that quarterback position.
Sure.
So I understand why they
Shows
did it.
he learned a lot too. You know, like
Agreed.
From,
He's not going to make the same mistake.
Let me get
twice.
a vet quarterback.
But let's be honest. Kirk Cousin is a master at getting paid.
Oh yeah,
He
absolutely
has one playoff win.
Want to talk about getting
and
the bag?
He has received over $300 million in guaranteed football money.
It's good to be a quarterback.
He is going to be a top 5 paid player of all time with one
good point.
playoff victory.
Yep.
So, do I think this makes them a contender for a Super Bowl? No. But here's the thing about being in the dance. You got to make it. So
Sure.
if they win their division, they can host a playoff
make the
game.
playoffs,
They have
everybody's
a
got a
lot
shot.
of talent, and I think, Kirk could take them to another level. He would have thrown for almost 5,000 yards if he stayed healthy.
Sure.
So listen, is it the right move? 100%. But am I thrilled or scared that they're going to make a ton of noise?
Yeah.
No, I think the NFC got extremely competitive with some other moves that were made.
Yeah, no, listen, they're in an advantageous position, though, because at the end of the day, they were competitive last year. Now they upgraded majorly at the quarterback position. I would say at bare minimum, it just probably puts them in contention for a playoff spot, especially in a weaker NFC right now. Because outside of, I would say, again, right now in the NFC, I was looking at it, there's like, 3-4 teams that you could probably say pencil in for a playoff spot next year, right? You got the Eagles, you got the 49ers, you got the Cowboys, and you got the Lions. Those are the 4 teams that I would say absolutely surefire, barring no major injuries to any of their star players. Those 4 teams make the playoffs. Well, with the extra 3 spots right now, too, in a weaker NFC, I think that gives the Falcons a great shot. And to your larger point, you just got to get there. Once you get there, anything can happen.
Absolutely.
If they win one playoff game, who knows, right? It's just getting that momentum. I'm with you. I don't think they're winning the Super Bowl next year, but I think that their chances of making the playoffs have now gone up exponentially with that move. I really like it. I thought it was the perfect move.
Now, here's the thing. You want to talk about the perfect move? Russell Wilson going to the Steelers, right? Patrick McQueen
Master Yoda
going to the
strikes
Steelers,
again.
right? So here's the situation, right? Everyone talks about Mike Tomlin. He can't figure out the offense. He loves defense so much, but he has not had a losing season. And now you're going to give him a professional quarterback.
Sure.
Regardless of what you think about Russell Wilson, last year he threw for about 28 touchdowns with only 8 interceptions.
Numbers were solid.
The Steelers have not had 28 touchdowns the last 2 seasons combined from their quarterback.
Yep.
And now if Russ can just do what he did here, perfect setup. Now, they got rid of Deontay Johnson, brought in a cornerback. I would like to see them bring in another receiver, but one thing I don't worry about the Steelers and Mike Tomlin, they know how to draft receivers, right? They have a strong running game.
They're good at drafting in
allocated
general.
resources towards that offensive line. And in Pittsburgh, they stayed to their identity, right? And they got better at what they were good at. To me, what I've noticed about this free agency is that teams doubled down on what they were good at, especially the better teams. So that is the Steelers bringing in Patrick McQueen and other defensive talent. That is the Baltimore Ravens bringing in Derrick Henry when they already have a good run game. But now you have Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson to worry about in the run game.
Yes.
We talked about Philadelphia Eagles adding Saquon.
Such a contrast of running styles, too.
100%. And remember, they got that kid Mitchell that showed a lot of promise, and he got hurt for that playoff
you stole
game.
him from me in fantasy.
Listen, don't sound so upset, man. You're
Yeah.
sick. Don't get yourself worked up. But that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm noticing from this particular free agency moves. The better team doubled down on what they were good at and added an element.
Or got back to their championship identity, like the Giants building at the line of scrimmage pass rush. But go on. Oh, that hurt your soul right there, right? Because you're still on 1 point.
Listen. I'm not going to do it. We spend time talking about the Giants.
It's all good.
Let's just try to not be one of the top 5 worst teams in the league next year.
Yeah.
Maybe we should start there, right?
I agree.
Maybe we should not make it. Maybe we should go get Rome Dunze, right? Maybe we could pick up a wide receiver. Maybe we can just get.
I think they're going to get one,
right? Listen. Let's anyway. But look at the Green Bay Packers. right? Look at what the Green Bay Packers have done, right? That's all that I'm saying, right? Look at their weapons on offense, right? They brought in Josh Jacobs, right? They already had Aaron Jones. But when
who's gone now?
But again, cold-blooded, but they flipped Aaron Jones for Josh Jacobs, 3
a
years younger,
running back,
right? Very, very highly productive, and they're not paying anyone, and they brought in good defensive talent.
They got the young quarterback, too. You know, that formula that I was talking about earlier. Young quarterbacks start paying those other pieces, you know, put the weapons and prerequisite things around them. And you can do that when you have a quarterback on a controllable contract.
Again, you have to have weapons to have a quarterback play productive, right?
Totally
like I
agree.
said, we need someone to throw the ball, we need someone to run the ball, and we need someone to catch the ball. And right now, we have none of those things. None of those things.
Yeah.
Right? So, again, love the defensive moves, love burn, but we have no one to throw, run, or catch.
Yeah, we still got a draft, though. I want to go back to the Russ conversation for a second, though. So Russell Wilson, I think this is really interesting to the Steelers. The Steelers were actually picked, this is by like the Vegas odds, to just miss the playoffs next year. Add Russell Wilson. The line actually didn't move so much, which I do find kind of intriguing. Here's what I'll tell you about Russ. This is a huge year for him because his career could potentially be on the line. And here's what I'll say about it. I think this could either be the perfect situation for him or it could be the end of his career. And I'll tell you why I think it could be the perfect situation for him. It's no secret that while the Pittsburgh Steelers are a well-run organization, they don't exactly have a perfect beat on how to run an offense. Well, maybe that might just be the perfect thing for Russ. Because what's Russ like really known for and good at? He's good for kind of ad-libbing, scrambling when times are rough, you know, and then just looking downfield and making a play. Lord knows he's still got an arm. And Lord knows that George Pickens can go down and catch a deep ball over anybody. All right? I really like that. So maybe the Steelers adding Queen, too, to the defense, I think is a huge move. You pair him up with a guy like Watt, all of a sudden that defense looks very formidable. You talked about them allocating resources to the offensive line. They have two solid backs, not one, two, okay, because that's kind of the league now, multiple backs, all right? This is going to be really, not that I'm hinting at anything there, you know, like this is the NFL nowadays, all right? You got to move with the program. With Russ, I'm really interested to see how it works out. Now, on the other token, Russ has got to be on his best behavior. None of this, you don't walk into Pittsburgh and go, oh, well, if you want to talk to me, you got to contact this person. That no, Russ, I'm sorry. I'm going to be a little bit vulgar here. That shit is over, dude. You right now are playing for your NFL life. If you don't make it work this year and ingratiate your teammates, which I saw was a problem in Seattle and I saw was also a problem in Denver, I'm not sitting here trying to pile on Russ for everything. I think it's a combination of things that allude to this. But part of it is not acting accessible to your teammates. Why do people love guys like Brady, Manning, Mahomes, all those guys? Because they were one of the guys at the end of the day. They didn't act any different. They would sit there. Tom Brady, notorious for this, and I hate doing this too because I'm giving him more credit. Tom Brady used to go up to like the 7th round pick. The last guy that was drafted, hey, how you doing, man? My name's Tom Brady. That's what he would do. You think Russell Wilson would do something like that? He better this year because I really do think that if he fails this year, I don't think another team is going to pick him up.
So Mike Tomlin won't let him fail. Everything that you mentioned,
like
coaching can fix.
Sure.
And Mike Tomlin has high character.
Gotta
He's
be
a
one of the
true
guys.
leader of men. And Mike Tomlin has a pulse on his team, and he'll be able to lead Russ correctly. To the Snead points that you were making, the Pittsburgh Steelers have an identity.
They do?
The New York Giants have none.
They're getting back to
none.
it, brother.
You talked about one running back, two running backs. We have no running backs.
No, we got one.
Okay.
Devin Singletary.
We don't have an identity
maybe
of running the
A.J.
ball. We
Dillon,
don't have an
too.
identity of throwing the ball, and we don't have an identity of catching the ball.
Can't be much worse than they were last year.
Now, let me say this, right?
What'd they end up with? 5 wins? 6 wins?
Let's focus on the Steelers, right?
We're on it.
And then focus on the Steelers. You're going to hear it first, and listen to me carefully, right?
Listening.
The Steelers are going to the AFC Championship.
Whoa!
You hear
A lot
it
of my
right
students
now.
at school are gonna be
They need
very
to make
happy.
one more move because they got rid of Deontay Johnson. They need to bring in a top flight, young receiver, and this draft is loaded with
second
them,
guy, just to
right?
take some pressure
pair
off Pickens.
with
Because Pickens is
with
a dude.
Pickens,
Pickens is
right?
a dude.
Maybe even bring in a veteran, right? So that there's some strong leadership there. But you've heard it here first. That defense, Mike Tomlin, with a professional quarterback, is going to the AFC Championship championship with one more move at receiver, one more move on that offensive
You're
line.
banking a lot, though, on Russ really coming back.
I am
through
banking
with that
on
one.
Mike Tomlin having a professional quarterback. Now, everyone throws shade at Mike Tomlin. Now, remember this. The guy that beat him the most was Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. Both of them aren't here. The Ravens have taken a step back. They've lost their entire coaching staff except their head coach, right? They've lost McQueen.
I don't know if I agree with that.
They've lost
one.
a lot of defensive talent.
The
right?
Ravens are culture builders.
They've
always
lost a
replace
lot
guys.
of defensive talent. They lost their veteran wide
They
receiver.
lost Wink and they got better on defense.
McDonald was the real deal.
Do you think it was, or do you think it was their personnel and culture?
No.
And Harbaugh's a big defensive guy, too.
I am telling you, it's always a dogfight between the Ravens and the Steelers.
No doubt.
The
Division
Ravens
rivals always tough.
Again, the Ravens need to watch out. Now, here's the thing. I'm a Baltimore Ravens lover, right? But I am telling you, this Pittsburgh Steelers are coming. And here's one other note. Whenever you make a deep playoff run, right, you get a little beat up, you get a little bit tired, and there's always like reversing to the mean. So I anticipate the Ravens taking a step back.
I call it
anticipate
reverting, but same difference. Sure.
Yeah. I anticipate
Or
the
regression to the
Steelers
mean.
taking a step forward. I see the Browns stepping back, and I see the Bengals being competitive, but I also think they're going to take a step back because they've taken a step back on defense, right? They're losing T. Higgins. They're losing their
Well, they're not
identity.
losing T. Higgins yet. They don't have to trade him.
Listen, again, you don't want to keep that type of nonsense on your team when you haven't taken care of one of your own, like the Giants did with Saquon.
Yep.
So now when they leave, right, you'll
It's a
see what
business,
happens.
brother.
So just remember, when you heard it here first, the Cincinnati Bengals will take a step back. They'll be competitive, but all of a sudden, right, that check comes due. So you're paying Burrow, and you're going to have to pay Chase. Now all of a sudden, you lost Tyler Boyd. Right, they're going to take a step back while the Pittsburgh Steelers take a step forward because, again, they're going to have to figure out those things. So you've heard it here first. The Bills took a step back, right? Miami took a step back, right? The Chargers are going to take a step forward. Now they have to do some more things first, but I believe in Harbaugh. They'll take a step forward. So just you pay attention. The Steelers right now are headed to the AFC Championship game with 2 more moves.
All right, so listen, I think that might be a little bit premature, but I am very curious to see what the Steelers do. We'll see what the rest of their moves are. Looking at the Ravens right now, yeah, they lost Queen, but to bring in a guy like Henry, like all the Ravens do is the Ravens are very similar to the Steelers. They're a very well-run organization. They draft extremely well. They have a fantastic culture. They have guys leave in and out each year. Even the year that they didn't have Lamar at the end of the season, I believe that was 2 years ago, they still made the playoffs, and they're a crazy fumble return for a touchdown away from advancing to the second round against the
Steelers
Bengals.
always win 9 games, right? You add Russ, you add McQueen.
Yeah.
That counts for at least 2 more wins. So now, what are you talking? 11-5.
I'm from the show me state, brother.
All right.
I'll tell you who I like as a potential AFC championship bid this year, and it ain't the Steelers. It's those
If you say the
daggone Houston Texans.
Ooh.
Because them boys, not them boys, those other guys in Texas, they're making
Other guys.
They are making
Them
some
other
moves.
boys?
They're making some moves. Now, you alluded to the Bengals and some of their issues right now. Well, one of those issues is, I agree with you. Joe Mixon got done a little bit dirty, especially because he took a pay cut last year.
$4 million.
He took a pay cut to stay with that team, and they still cut him. But this goes back to when you're working out all these different contracts. I assume the Bengals are sitting here trying to talk about T. Higgins, about what they can possibly work out long term. But T. Higgins obviously seems
They have not
frustrated
even talked to
nonetheless.
him in 1 year when it comes to a contract extension.
Yeah, no, they have not actually. Well, they haven't advanced the talks. It seems that they're at somewhat of an impasse. It seems for whatever reason, T. Higgins wants to stay there. He's reported as saying, "I love Cincinnati. I want to stay there." But he's frustrated about the long-term contract situation. The Bengals, I think, are kind of figuring out somewhat of their future. I still think if you get a healthy Joe Burrow, you get Jamar Chase back. Remember the kid I keep telling you about, Chase Brown, that running back? I think that's one of the other reasons why they let Joe Mixon go. He showed a lot of promise at the end of the season last year. They re-signed the other guy, Tre'Davious Williams, so they got a couple of backs that they can still go and use. I'm not against Joe Mixon, too, for the record. I think Joe Mixon is a solid starting running back, but I also think he is replaceable. I think what people forget sometimes is this is a business. That being said, look at the Texans.
So no, let me stop you right there.
Go
Let me
ahead.
stop you right there. All right. And that is also a part of the problem. When you only look at football as a business, football is the ultimate team sport.
It is.
Right? You need every man to do their job to be successful. When you treat it like a business, when you don't take care of your own, when you don't take care of Saquon Barkley that has been in your system for 6+ years, when you don't take care of not even take care, when you do a mix and dirty, you ask him to take a pay cut. He takes a $4 million pay cut because he wants to be a Bengal for life.
Yep.
And you say you're going to trade him or cut him, and now you trade him away. That sends a strong message to every other player in the locker room. Go get your money. Don't negotiate. No hometown discount, because you know why? They're just going to come around and do you dirty at some point. Because if they could do Joe Mixon dirty, a guy that wants to be here, a guy that took a pay cut, did everything you asked, and you still cut him, you drafted T. Higgins, right? And you haven't talked to him in 1 year to give him a contract extension, go get your money. Right? And when it's a locker room that just is about money, right? You're going to see the team implode. Joe Burrow got the bag. I promise you. Chase ain't taking nothing less than $35 million a year.
Chase is going to get the max.
So,
Chase is getting the max.
So again, if Chase gets 35 and Burrow's getting 50, 55, there's not a lot of room left to build a team.
And you can't build a champion. Well,
so
here's
guess what?
I'll say.
They're going to take that step back, like I said.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we'll see. I still think they're good. Let's say the worst comes to worst. Either they trade T. Higgins or T. Higgins decides to sit out, which I don't think he's going to do because, again, that's $21 million he's still leaving on the table.
But remember, he does not have to report until the first game of the season.
That's fine.
So that's no OTAs. That's no training camp. And trust me, you don't just roll out of bed no matter how much you train and then just go into NFL games or professional football games.
Who's he hurting more doing that? If he doesn't show up and he's not ready, he's still playing for a contract one way or the other. Yeah. I hear you on
Then it's going to take him 4 weeks to get ready. Then he's going to do his thing, and then he's going to be a free agent.
But he's hurting himself in doing that because he's putting less good tape.
No, the team is hurting.
The team's hurting, but he's hurting too. What's he trying to do? He's trying to get a contract.
When Chris Jones did it and the Chiefs lost that game to the Lions, did that hurt Chris Jones? No, it did not. Right? It sent a strong message to the Chiefs organization. Bring me in, pay me what I deserve. Now look at what happened at the end of this season, right? Because if they had won that game versus the Lions, they might have had home field advantage.
Again, defensive line, I would say, is a little bit more impactful position, so I think it's a little bit different. Here's the thing, too.
Taking care of your own. That's my point.
Chris Jones is way more valuable to the Kansas City Chiefs than T. Higgins is to the Bengals.
You're not understanding the point. It's taking care of your own.
You can't take care of everybody. It's
everyone
impossible.
Is not your own. The reason why the Kansas City Chiefs just paid Chris Jones $150 million is because they wanted to keep the core together. They wanted to keep Patrick Mahomes.
Most impactful player outside of Patrick Mahomes.
They wanted to keep Patrick Mahomes. They wanted to keep Kelsey, and they wanted to keep Andy Reid, and they wanted to keep Chris Jones.
Yes, the most impactful players.
With the Bulls, it was Michael.
You realize T. Higgins was hurt last year, too, and the Bengals were still winning games, even when he wasn't on the field.
How much better would they have been with him? Again, think about this. A 53-man roster. Okay, in terms of importance, right? T. Higgins is what?
But do they need to get better on offense or defense?
In terms of importance, right? T. Higgins is probably the 5th or 6th most important guy on the Bengals, right? In terms of name.
Somewhere around
that. In terms of name, not position, right?
I got you.
So on a 53-man roster, if you're treating the 5th best guy on the roster like trash, if you're the 30th guy, if you're the 45th guy, if you're the 53 man on the roster, how in the world do you think they're going to treat you? When you don't take care of your own, it sends a very bad message in the locker room. To go back to the Giants, where they failed is when you pay Daniel Jones $160 million, right? When Saquon Barkley represented 75% of the production, you created turmoil in your own locker room. Refute that argument.
It's actually really easy.
Go ahead.
So you like 49ers, right?
Go ahead.
49ers?
Yeah, go ahead.
Great culture.
Go ahead.
See who they just released?
Armstead?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's that about? That's one of their best run stoppers right there. Why didn't they pay him? He's one of their guys. That's their culture guy, man. Why didn't they pay him? Take care of your guys. Culture guy. Take care of them.
There is no one on the 49ers that is their guy.
What do you mean?
Right. They traded for CMC.
Armstead is like the most popular guy in that locker room.
They traded for CMC.
Did you not just see Debo Samuel come out what he said?
You know what?
You can't pay all 53 guys.
I lied. Debo is the only guy there that is drafted and homegrown that is truly one of their guys. Maybe you can say
you don't just get a culture, though, right? Through homegrown guys.
Yeah, but listen. But
it's great, but that's not how the NFL works.
Now, understand, but here's my point. He got paid. They asked him to restructure in Armstead. He chose not to.
No, he actually restructured last year, and then they still cut him this year.
And they asked him to restructure again, and he said no.
I didn't hear any reports about that. All I heard was the release. Well, and
yes,
he is, by all accounts in the 49ers locker room, he is the culture
first of
guy.
All, you proved my argument because they paid him the first time.
No, you just want every team to pay all 53 players.
No,
it's not possible.
Pay your guys. They paid Armstead. They paid Debo. Right now, Ayuk is up.
So he took a haircut and then he got cut, just like Mixon. It doesn't always work out like a fantasy world. I get it, man. Team culture, but it is also a business side of things. There is a salary cap. There is a future to sit there. And they also couldn't keep him because they signed Vernon Hargrave. So why didn't they? Why didn't they re-up Arik Armstead, who everybody loves in the 49ers locker room and is a culture guy, and then go sign another guy?
But they have a history of paying their guys and keeping a certain culture and continuity in the locker room. Yes, I'm not saying you stay on the team forever, but for that second contract, for that second contract, to keep a culture, to keep an identity, you must take care of your guy.
You can't pay a quarterback and two top flight receivers top line money.
Who are you talking about?
And put a competitive product.
I'm going back to the
Bengals. I'm going back to the Bengals now.
Okay, yes, you paid Burrow, right? You paid
look at what the Cowboys are in now.
But my point is, again, Mixon got paid, but you did him dirty. You should have cut him last year.
I don't disagree.
Don't ask him to take less money and then cut him. The action was dirty. But they took care of Mixon. So there's different arguments here, right?
They also stood by him when that whole domestic allegation was coming through as well, and they didn't know what was going on.
Again.
And he was implicated.
And again, he showed loyalty to them.
Sure.
He took the pay cut, right, to make sure they can make the moves that they wanted to.
But if you want loyalty, go into Cub Scouts. I get this is a game, but this is also a business, man.
And again, the locker room is a brotherhood.
I get it.
You wrestled and you coached.
1,000%.
Again, I don't know what the equivalent is, but you and your guys.
All this money.
But you.
This is a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Again, the locker room is sacred. The locker room is sacred, right? And when again, I hate to bring this up, right? You look at the Philadelphia Eagles, right? They imploded after being 10-1. There's a lot of rumors out there that one player may have slept with another player's wife, right? And all of a sudden,
that's a whole different
cost a lot of drama and issues in that locker room.
Tony Parker alert here,
right? So all I'm trying to say is, right, the locker room matters, and if it's just business, all of a sudden a team can implode, right? When the locker room isn't together, when management doesn't respect the locker room, have an identity, and you'll get to your ultimate destination.
So here's all I'll say again. Going back to this whole AFC Championship conversation, because we can talk back on this in the second half of the final segment, all right? Texans are going for it.
Listen,
Bringing in a guy like running back Mixon, and they already had Will Anderson last year, who was a candidate for Rookie of the Year. Now, he wasn't going to win, of course, because Stroud and Puka Nacua. I think he almost had double-digit sacks. Now you bring in my man Danielle Hunter. Okay, so you got Danielle Hunter. You got all those weapons coming back. You got C.J. Stroud in year 2. They won a playoff game already. That team, they're going all in, man. They got that royal flush, and they are bringing it at the table.
Listen to me.
I like the Texans' chances next year to make AFC Championship.
I got nothing negative to say about the Texans. I love every move they made. Every move they made.
But you do realize some of those free agency moves might lose them some of those, drafted culture guys. I hope they don't lose the locker room in a year.
What are you talking about? It doesn't even make any sense.
I'm talking about their young receivers that they're going to have to sign in a year.
Again, the Texan, real quick, right? The Texan proved their point. They went out, got Will Anderson because DeMeco Ryan loved him. So they traded.
Coach.
right? They traded up to get the 3rd overall pick to go get their guy, get C.J. Stroud and their guy, Will Anderson.
But just realize that signing,
build a culture.
But just realize that signing of Danielle Hunter now, okay? Because I think it's a 2 or 3 year deal.
2-year deal. 2-year deal, $49 million.
That loses you one of those receivers in a year.
You worry about that next year. What receiver?
But I'm just saying, I hope they don't destroy their culture.
Listen, you're just being a jerk right now, and you're wrong. And you're wrong.
I'm definitely not wrong.
That's all the time we have for Run It Back. We got to go to segment 3.
Yeah,
Bye.
we'll be right back to talk it all back on segment 3. What is up, everybody? I am your host, Shane Mowry, again, joined by my co-host for the final segment number 3, the jerk. I'm sorry, I mean Mr. DaCosta.
That's where you want to start? Is that where you want to start?
It was too good to resist. I planned it on the break, man. I had to just come in with it. I knew it would get a laugh. No, but seriously, I guess apparently I am the jerk now. But take a little bit of break from football, all right? Because we're going to go to, Fantasy Island. Remember when you were a kid, you just thought you could be whatever you wanted, right?
Sure.
Just dreams. All of a sudden you got to become an adult and then reality sank in. Well, reality still has not sank in for a lot of these Jake Paul fans and their what's that place that they called back in the Peter Pan story? Their Neverland just continues to grow because it was just announced, I believe, last week that live on Netflix this summer, Jake Paul will be boxing the legend, Iron Mike Tyson. Listen, I'll go through my analysis on this and that, but wow. I mean, I want to say I'm not going to watch it, but I know I'm going to watch it.
Oh, I'm going to watch it. No, I'm going to watch it.
I have to watch it. But let me just ask you this. Just give me your thoughts on this whole thing. We are in a state of age now where a YouTuber has somehow found his way to box, arguably, the greatest heavyweight boxer of all time. Arguably. Personally, while I do love Iron Mike, he's 2 or 3 for me.
Listen, if I got to be honest, I can care less about Jake Paul's fights.
Okay.
Right? But he got Mike Tyson?
Music to my ears.
He's got Mike Tyson?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm interested.
Well, he got tired of fighting the mailman.
Because it's facts.
Yeah.
Right? But here's the thing, right? And he's entertaining or whatever, and I get it. He's got a big fan base.
He does.
But this one is intriguing because, Jake Paul has been on his journey. And so he's developed into a little bit of a boxer. Right, he's got a little bit of game.
I want a hot take,
like a little bit.
Noise.
You know what I mean? He was like a novice, super wet behind the ear. But he's beaten a couple postmen, so therefore, right, he's got a little bit of game.
A retired NBA player, a couple of retired MMA fighters, which I guess is somewhat because there is.
He has a
component.
couple official fights under his belt. Period. It's facts.
And then he's 0-1 against a real boxer. But continue.
But he's got fights underneath his belt. True or not?
He does.
Okay, so he's got a little bit of game.
He does.
Mike Tyson is dirt old, and he's still got game.
Bro, have you seen that dude working mitts? You got to be insane to get in the ring with that guy.
Listen, there's not many things in life I'm afraid of, but I'm telling you, I'm not getting in the ring with Mike Tyson.
At any age. No.
At any age.
Hell no.
At any age.
I'm a combat athlete. I wouldn't want to fight Tyson in any respect.
I love my ears. You see what I'm saying? Let alone my face and my life.
I love my jaw.
No.
This side, this side.
So what I'm trying to say is, and listen, I'm sure there's some backdoor deals that had to have gotten done and hey, don't kill Jake Paul and all this type of stuff.
I want to see the contract.
But
I want to see it.
If this is halfway legitimate, Mike Tyson will accidentally catch him and knock him out. Fridays, you got knocked out, right?
True.
So listen, I'm interested. I'm going to buy it. I've never bought a Jake Paul fight. I can tell you this one.
Dude hits him
right?
again. Grandmama gave me that chain.
I want to watch this one. So Jake Paul, you got my interest. You got my money. I'm watching because I want to see what Mike Tyson is about to do to you.
So I have my students came to me with this the other day. And they were just they're all there's one kid who actually agreed with me and going with your stance on the fight too as well. But all my students were like, Mike Tyson is like 57 or 58 years old. They're just like, his last whatever amount of fights he got knocked out in. And I go, well, hold on a second, guys. A couple years ago, he fought an exhibition against Roy Jones. I said, go watch that, first of all. Roy Jones was covering up for dear life, basically, in that 8 rounds. And that was an exhibition. Tyson still looked smooth. He still had that little dip and rip, that head roll that was just so dangerous. It was followed either by a thunderous hook or an uppercut that put you into the next stratosphere. So he still looked good. Okay, so he's a couple years older now. 57, 58. I have to question boxing on this, all right? It's Mike Tyson. Granted, he's a legend. You can license a guy at that old. Like, I want to kind of somewhat understand the licensing process. And the reason that I'm bringing this up is because he is old. And I think that there's a lot of different things to break down in this. His ability to still take a punch. Now, I think he can take one. I think he'll be fine, especially against an amateur like Jake Paul. But it has to at least come into question because he hasn't been in like a legitimate.
You're so nice. You're worried about the senior citizen.
I'm
trying. Is
trying.
that what you're saying right now?
Well, so here's.
Do you realize the senior citizen is a freaking killer?
You called him a senior citizen.
Right?
I didn't say that. I said
you're the one that said he need. You're worried about his license
Mike,
and being able to fight.
Him. That's
what you were alluding to.
I just said you were older.
You said old dirt? What? Say that again?
Older. Mike Tyson, I would never call you old dirt. Never,
all right,
never,
because
never, ever. Nope.
He's a killer, right? And at the end of the day,
did you see about Rogan the one time when Rogan like made a joke and Mike Tyson just goes, "That's not funny," and Rogan was like, I'm sorry.
Yo, listen, like I hear what you're saying, but I don't care. I don't care Mike Tyson's age. At the end of the day, you look at the card, and here's the thing, right? First of all, it's a money grab. Sure. Mike Tyson's about to make $50 to $100 million. They got me to buy the fight. I'm going to buy the fight, right? So a person that has not watched any of Jake Paul's other fights live paid for it.
You're not missing anything.
Right? I'm buying this one. But here's the thing, and I think this is the intrigue. If Jake Paul wins, it gives him credibility. Here's why.
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, it's going to say Jake Paul knocked out Mike Tyson.
It will.
It doesn't say that
if that's how he
Jake
wins,
Paul knocked out a 60-year-old senior citizen in Mike Tyson.
Sure.
That there's no disclaimers. There's no pre-qualifications. It's just going to say Jake Paul knocked out Mike Tyson. Now, if Mike Tyson knocks out Jake Paul, I think
this is over.
I think
it's over.
I think
you couldn't beat a 58-year-old man. Stop trying to box.
Think every fan of boxing that's not a fan of Jake Paul is going to cheer and be in hooray, because if Mike Tyson, and again, I'm sure he's not going to make him silly, he's not going to kill him, but I think Tyson going to beat him up. Like, I don't even think Tyson want to knock him. I think he want to hurt him a bit, because that's Mike.
Toy with him a little bit.
Not even
show
toy.
him that there's levels to boxing.
Bruise him.
Yeah.
Mike doesn't play with people. He hurts you. He physically hurts you. So if Jake could make it past 3 rounds, that's more than some people ever made.
Very true. So that's why I'm very curious to see kind of like the contracts and the details of this fight, which I know Jake Paul's people will never let us see the entire thing. Yeah, I said that. All right. But I would like to see it, because the only way, you've alluded to it already, the only way I can believe this as a legitimate boxing match is if Tyson just basically goes out there and outclasses him. Outside of Tyson, and again, he looked pretty good over 8 rounds against Roy Jones Jr. He didn't look like he was fatiguing or whatnot. So outside of Tyson, either somewhere in the contract saying you can't hit him that hard, or you're going to take a dive on this one. Now, Netflix negotiated this. This isn't just Jake Paul, but Jake Paul has a hand in every contract negotiation. Mm-hmm. I see the angle where Jake Paul comes out a winner on this. However, I do think there's another side of this that people are failing to kind of recognize. There's a segment of the population, the boxing aficionados or fighting aficionados, experts, whatever, people that follow it on a regular, that will sit there and go, you still haven't really proven anything to me. You just beat a guy who's 58 years old, hasn't fought a legitimate boxing match in almost 20 years, not counting the exhibition against Roy Jones. And why don't you just fight an active boxer? Like, if you're really trying to prove yourself, go and fight an actual boxer. Now, I get it. There's also a segment of the population that's going to go, he knocked out Mike Tyson, fair game. I'm in this crowd right here. I'm finally going to give Jake Paul some real credit. The fact that he will get into a ring with Mike Tyson, I have to respect that. I have to, because up until then, he's fighting smaller fighters. He's fighting older guys, okay? Or he's fighting retired boxers. He fought one actual active boxer right now. Ironically, he lost. Actually, it's unironically. Fighting somebody like a Mike Tyson, I don't care how old he is. Again, there are some questions about that. But if Mike Tyson can get in a ring and take punches from Roy Jones Jr., a far superior boxer than Jake Paul in any universe, I don't see how in any legitimate boxing match Jake Paul has any chance. So I just don't see it.
Right. All sports are entertainment, right? And we live in a capitalist society,
That
right?
we do.
So at the end of the day, this is about a money grab. Mike's going to make 50, 60, 70, $100 million, right? Because at the end of the day, people are intrigued in seeing Mike again, right? Jake has his new generation following.
And I can't see Tyson
right?
taking a dive either.
And no.
I just can't see it.
Not at this stage or whatever.
Not Iron Mike.
No. So what I think that's going to happen, and listen, football, UFC, boxing are the few, maybe rugby a little bit, I don't know as much, but football, UFC, and boxing are the few sport that you can go out and actually impose your will, and it is legally imposing harm on someone else.
Yes,
right?
you can legally go and try to hurt somebody.
In society, we can't just exercise rage, right? Mike Tyson is a professional fighter, and to be a professional fighter, you have to be able to impose your will
100%.
and
strike fear in the heart of your opponent.
Strike fear, but get out that rage, that anger, like that stress, all your problems. You get in the ring and it's legal to go beat that person up.
Yeah.
Right? So whether Mike is 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, it is in him, right, to impose his will on another man and impose harm on them. And so at 60 years old, all Mike knows and how he's been trained is to inflict punishment on another human being.
Yeah.
And he's not going to care who Jake Paul is.
Sure.
Regardless of what that contract says, let him get a good punch on Mike. He going to forget it all. And he going to...
You mean let Mike get a good punch on him?
No. Let Jake.
Oh,
hit
and you're
Tyson.
saying Mike's going to be... Oh.
And he's like...
I thought we were just doing a
Screw
little
this little
exhibition.
contract. You know, he's good. No.
Wham!
Yes.
Yeah.
It's going to go from like, oh, this is about money.
Wham!
Listen, here's what's going to happen. They're going to get in the ring, right? And it's all about, hey, before the ring, like, hey, guys, fun and love. Let's get this.
Fun.
Let's get this $100 million. Let's do it, Mike. Yeah, baby. Let's do it, right?
Jake Paul throws a hard right.
And better yet, he makes him bleed.
Ooh.
Let's just say Jake Paul makes him bleed.
Nobody makes me bleed my own blood.
Exactly.
Nobody.
Exactly. So I can tell you, Mike's going to forget. First of all, Mike can't read that damn contract. He didn't read that contract.
All he said was,
he
said, sign the contract, big boy.
He ain't going to remember nothing in that ring, and he's going to inflict punishment on Jake.
Did you see the face-off, too? Tyson ain't lost that stare down, man. Like, Jake Paul looks like I'm a good. I was in one MMA fight in my life, and I coached my buddy in a bunch. He fought, I think, like 13 fights. You can see, and I watched a lot of UFC too as well. You can notice little ticks and subtle things of like another guy, like which guy is a little bit nervous, which guy is showing little signs. You could see it in Jake Paul, like, holy crap, like I'm getting in the ring with Mike Tyson.
What I would have loved to see in that stare off, right, is that, you know,
That's where he doesn't talk any shit.
You know, when you go to the hospital, right, and they put on your pulse, right, and they could, you know, your heartbeat. Oh my God. I would love to have known Jake Paul's heart rate in that moment.
Yep.
Because that thing was...
I'm with you. And listen, we forgot to put this actually on the topics list, but this actually brings me into another recent thing that just happened. So we all remember Francis Ngannou almost shocked the world, right, with his Tyson Fury boxing match, all right? He almost shocked the world. So... You love that I picked that up. Our producer's sitting there going, yeah, Shane, that's awesome. So he went for boxing match number 2 against one Anthony Joshua. Guys, it's over. It's over. I love Francis. Go back to fighting MMA. Because when a boxer really prepares for you, that's what happens. I'm surprised that they let him get up after the first knockdown in the second round. It was bad. And then Anthony Joshua just sat there, stared at him, drops his left hand, boom, right down the pipe. I'm talking folded leg out. Now, I give Francis the utmost respect for getting in there and getting in a boxing ring with two of the baddest boxers in the business, and Tyson Fury, almost shocking the world in that one, okay? And then Anthony Joshua. And maybe he could develop this over time. You've made your money. You've made the bag. You've done well. Get back into MMA now and just go and fight that way. That was a bad one. You got to go watch that knockout. That was a bad one.
You want to know why? That fight alone.
I didn't think I'd ever see Francis get knocked out like that.
That fight alone, he made more than he made in his UFC career.
No, you're right.
Career off of one boxing match. So those UFC fighters, they're not going to stop boxing. Now, eventually, they're going to learn and pick it up. But listen, let's be real. If he got knocked out for $25, $30 million, right, for one fight, 12 rounds. He didn't even make it 12 rounds. Right? What was it? 6?
It was 2.
Oof.
It was the second round. And out.
But again,
cold.
Listen, we can end with this. If someone pays you $25 million, would you care if you got knocked out in two rounds?
If it's a one and done, maybe. If it's a one and done, I don't think Francis, more so for his health. I just don't think he should be getting in there with these heavyweights again.
Listen.
Or at least start at the bottom. He literally fought two of the best heavyweights in the game right now.
Listen, I'm going to say this.
Anthony Joshua is a bad dude.
Let me say this.
That's a bad dude.
And we can leave with this. We've all ran across a few baddies in our life. And some of us ain't make it a minute or two. Right?
Oh,
so
man.
I can tell you.
We're still talking about.
We ain't get paid for that minute or two.
We talking about competition?
So for 1 or 2 rounds to get paid $25 million to get knocked out? Listen, right? We've done worse in our lives.
Listen, I can't hate on it. Now,
just saying, hey, you know what I mean?
Good for Francis.
You know what I mean?
The bag. And you know what? Credit to Anthony Joshua, too. He was really classy about it. He didn't show off or anything. He gave Francis the utmost respect. And Francis was fine after the fight. But that legitimately scared me. And the fact that it was 2 consecutive knockdowns, right back. You could see Francis didn't even know where he was after the first knockdown. And then that second one, I was like, guys, it wasn't clear to anybody to just stop the fight. I don't care that he made it up at 9. His hands were barely up in front of his face. He had the look of, I shouldn't be fighting in this fight anymore. It should be over.
But here's the thing, and this is where I think boxers are so much more skilled, right? No offense to UFC fighters.
Pure strikers.
Right?
Yes, just in the punching.
Because my thing with UFC, you get the knee to the face, you get the random elbow. So a lot of the times
taken down and pounded.
In UFC, it's...
Oh, boy. Thinking about that.
No comment. No comment.
Yeah. Sorry.
In UFC,
taken down and beaten down. There you go. Is that better?
I mean, listen. Your kids are not going to like that one. That's all I'm going to say.
Oh, they're actually quite the opposite. They're going to love
it.
They are. They are.
Stop it.
Just come to my classroom one day. You'll see exactly what I'm
UFC, right? You, like I said, a knee, an elbow, right? You get caught by surprise and you knock someone out. In boxing, right? It is striking. It's in the phone booth. It is
just punching.
Right? It is straight defense and it's straight striking. So at the end of the day,
skill set matters.
Exactly. Yeah. So can you bob and weave? Can you get out of the way? What can you do? Can you move your feet? There's so much going on, right, in a small amount of space. And yes, you can easily get knocked out, but you don't got to worry about a knee or an elbow to the face to catch you off guard.
It's about who's the better boxer.
That is the difference with boxing and UFC. And the UFC fighters are going to have to learn the defense, right? The agility of
head movement.
Head movement.
The head movement is probably the most important thing in boxing.
Once those UFC fighters learn that, then they'll be more competitive.
The problem for them, though, is they can't just go and work on that because their sport dictates that they have to be well-rounded in a multitude of skill sets, whereas just focusing on being a boxer, the boxing stance. And this is why you'll never see a boxer come over to MMA. For the record, I am not disrespecting the sweet science. And one good thing about all this stuff, it's actually bringing some positive attention back to boxing. So I do appreciate that. Boxing was becoming somewhat of a dying sport. So I'm glad that those guys are getting their notoriety. It's good because I have the utmost respect for boxing. I was a huge boxing fan as a kid. My dad got me into it. It's bringing positive eyeballs, but they're never going to step into an MMA ring because their stances, the way they lean, the way they parry and things like that, their legs would get destroyed by leg kicks just because of their stance.
What I do know is that Jake Paul and Tyson are going to be big winners in this, and most likely UFC is going to be loser in this. But when you start to think about winners and losers,
Dana White's so pissed every time he watches Francis go out and make these bags because it's just proving like I didn't need you.
Yep.
Like, I'm doing this all on my own. The final thing, I'll do a quick shout out. And we were talking about watching live events together. I got a good idea. I think a boxing event, that event might be a good live one for us. We get together and we watch but even before that, I think in the future, get you a little bit more on this UFC game. We pick a big UFC card, me, you, Shawnee, we go live. We break down like an actual fight card. And it's cool because you have one guy, me, who has some fight experience and obviously watches it a ton. But you're kind of like the guy, I never did this, but I'm kind of like the common guy on the broadcast. I'm asking questions, I'm bringing different insight. So, good fight this weekend. Quick shout out to Sean O'Malley. He defends his belt against Cheeto Vera, which was his only loss in his career. Dude's bad. He looks a little funny. He's got tattoos all over his body. He's always got a different colored hair each time. But let me tell you something, man. You put that dude in an octagon, he's a bad dude, and he's one of the better pure boxers in MMA. Like he's got crazy reach. He's like a daddy long legs in there. He's so long. He can hit you with his legs, feet, knees from a lot of different angles. Cheeto Vera put up a hell of a fight, but it was a clear unanimous decision. The fight of the night, though, for me, Dustin the Diamond Poirier, coming off a loss to Justin Gaethje in his previous fight, fights Benoit Saint-Denis? Benoit Saint-Denis? I'm close enough, all right? I apologize if I'm messing the name. So this guy, I believe he was undefeated or maybe one loss coming into the fight. Big time up-and-comer. So Dustin was taking a risk because he's highly ranked in the top 5. This guy's an up-and-comer, but he's ranked behind him. Nobody else want to fight him. Not Dustin. And Dustin's nickname is the Diamond, right? Because one of two things happen to people when pressure either bursts pipes or it creates diamonds. And that's why Dustin is the Diamond, all right? He was losing that fight. He got taken down multiple times in the first round, got taken down multiple times in the second round, to the point where even in between rounds, he kept throwing a guillotine choke, it's called. And his coach was like, enough with the guillotine. He goes out and throws another one, but they stand up. He put him in that phone booth, man. He's a badass boxer, and he put him down on the cage. So shout out to those two guys. I apologize for the other winners of that night. I fell asleep for a little bit, so I say that quietly. But I am going to try and actually stay up for all these cards in the future, and I think that would be really cool if we watch.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
So, all right, people, we are
winners
back.
And losers.
Winners and losers. Okay, a little bit of this free agency frenzy. Okay, do you want to go first, the jerk, or do you want me to go?
Listen, just because I speak facts and the truth doesn't make me the jerk.
Yeah,
all right?
Yeah, whatever.
Even while you're sick, America can see that you're still a jerk. All right?
Wow.
So I'll go first, right? Yeah,
go ahead, buddy. You gonna go winners first?
Biggest, yes. Okay. My two winners, right, are the Texans.
Ooh,
right?
We have a common one.
And the Philadelphia Eagles.
Oh,
right? Are my two winners.
That actually makes you a jerk.
Are my two winners.
You overvaluing the
Texans.
Back position.
Listen, the Texans, right, went out and got Mixon. The Daniil Hunter is a great move to pair with.
That's my favorite move.
Will Anderson.
That is my favorite move.
What you also got to realize is that for that division, right, they've taken another step.
Sure.
The Jacksonville Jaguars just lost Calvin Ridley, their number one receiver, 76 catches, over 1,000 yards. That's gone.
Sure.
That's headed to Tennessee.
Yep.
Right? So, like, that's going to hurt them.
They got the answer. Mac Jones is coming to town.
They got Mac Jones. They got Mac Jones and Gabe Davis, right? Not adequate replacement, right?
Yeah.
So, I think CJ Stroud is going to take the next step. They have their draft picks.
I'm with you.
So I really like everything the Texans are doing.
They're going for it.
And again, it's still early in the process. So high on the Texans. Again, on the Eagles side, I'm going to go all the way back. They brought in Kellen Moore. Right, they brought in Vic Fangio, right, for offense and for defense.
I'm higher on Vic than I am Kellen, but continue.
Right, but on the offensive side with Kellen Moore, I'm not going to be worried about the offensive output. And even if he has to throw the ball to freaking Saquon for 100 catches,
you should,
right? Like
maybe not
he's going to get him.
He's
going to get him the ball, right? And so, and then defensively, they brought back C.J. Gardner Johnson.
He's on the team a
they
couple years
brought
ago.
over Huff, the defensive end, right? So
Solid move.
they got better in the secondary, and C.J. comes with a lot of attitude and a lot of heart, right? Toughness, culture.
Yep.
And then Huff, they pass rush. Again, they stuck to their identity and they enhanced their running game. They doubled both of those situations. They doubled down what they were good at. Remember, the Texans had Dameon Pierce, and now they added a professional running back in Joe Mixon that's been highly productive. He has the 5th best rushing production over the last 6 years, right? Behind likes of Derrick Henry and Alvin Kamara and names like that. So love that move. Love that. And I still think the Texans have more to do. So they doubled down on what they were good at, and the Philadelphia Eagles doubled down on what they're good at. Those are my 2 winners.
Okay, so listen, not much time really. Texans, for me, it's easy. I'm right there with you. I think the Danielle Hunter move shows you we're coming in, we're coming to Vegas, and we are coming to beat the odds. We are going to beat the casino right there. They are going for it all with a move like that. They got 2 legit pass rushers on the edge. You know me. I love a good pass rush. I love what C.J. Stroud showed us last year. The weapons all come back. A nice, solid veteran running back and a guy like Joe Mixon. I can't wait to see what this team does this year. My other one is the Green Bay Packers. The Green Bay Packers offense it really surprised me last year. It really did. Jordan Love, I'll be the first one to admit it, I was completely wrong about him. But now you bring in a younger, I would say, slightly more durable back. Aaron Jones and Josh Jacobs, to me, if you're looking at them in their performance height, they're very close. But the difference is he's a little younger, right? You can put a little bit more tread on those tires. Aaron Jones, while being very good, was a little bit banged up last year. They've got significant weapons at receiver, all young on controllable contracts. They bring in Xavier McKinney to help beef up that defense. What surprises me the most about the Packers is they're usually a much more build to the draft. That's like one of the more active free agencies I've ever seen them go after. I assume they'll now go try and draft on defense a little bit more because I think they're pretty much set on offense. They got 2 very nice young tight ends too as well. They did lose Bakhtiari, I believe. I think he actually went to... I can't remember where he went.
I don't know if I think he's looking at the Jets. I don't know if
I don't know if he's signed there yet, but I think I think the all signs point that he's going there. But again, I trust them to go and draft and figure out like the offensive line. I think they'll draft some defensive players too. They're always good at that. The biggest question with the Packers is I think they'll be able to score on anybody. It's just, can they stop? And they definitely got a good stopper in Xavier McKinney. He's an outstanding safety. We'll miss him from the Giants. I'll go right to the losers, okay? My 2. Number 1, sorry to do this, but we them boys, where were you in free agency? Guys, I can only assume that you're working out the contracts to which are going to take up the majority of your salary cap over the next 3 to 5 years with Dak, Micah, and CD. I'm not saying I'm against any of those contracts. They're good, but they are getting older on the offensive line. They got to go and figure that out. They are a little bit small on the defensive line, on the interior. That showed itself in the playoffs against the Packers, who ran roughshod on them. The fact that they did nothing in free agency really surprised me. Again, I try to be the nice guy and say, maybe it's, we'll be quiet this time instead of loud. But I like the Mike Zimmer pickup. But other than that, I just thought I would have seen more personnel moves. The Miami Dolphins are my other loser. The fact that you let a guy like Christian Wilkins, guys who screw up the interior, okay, mess up that for other teams, those guys are a dime a dozen. You got to keep that. That's one of your homegrown guys too, right? So I don't know what they're doing with their books over there, but I'm very confused. And they dropped the cornerback too, right?
Yeah, but Xavier Howard.
So I'm very confused with what the Dolphins are doing right now. But go ahead.
Listen, I absolutely agree with that one. That's a big one. My biggest loser, the Carolina Panthers, right? Again, it benefited the Giants, but there's no way you trade Burns and not get a first-round pick, right? The dude is 26 years old.
Yep. They waited a year too long.
And again, the rumor is that the Rams offered 2 first-round picks over a year ago,
before,
right? The year before, right? So ultimately, huge
point.
mistake, right? And again, you traded your first overall pick this year, which is Caleb Williams.
Yep.
So you overspent for Bryce Young, missed out on Caleb Williams. So major loser. Now, yes, like the fact that he brought over Deontay Johnson, but again, still don't love that in itself.
Yeah,
isolated.
I'm with you. They brought some linemen in, but...
And then lastly, in a similar theme is the Denver Broncos. You paid Russell Wilson $38 million to leave. right? You still don't have a quarterback. You traded away Jerry
Jeudy
Jeudy,
too, yep.
right? I'm not really sure about their identity. I don't know where that team is going. You got rid of Simmons, a great safety. Yes, you did it to save money, but I think they devalued that position. But he was one of the best at that position.
Yep.
So I always have a problem when you're getting rid of a
One of the
top
best.
5 player in the
gotcha.
position,
At that
regardless
position.
of money, and you don't have any talent.
Yeah.
So those are my 2 biggest losers.
I hear you. Well, listen, I think you made great points on both. But folks, that is all the time we have for segment number 3 and this episode of Run It Back. I apologize for being a little bit under the weather, but we power through.
I
Just
thought
for
you were
guys.
gonna apologize for being a
Oh,
jerk.
please don't forget, like, comment, and subscribe. We are looking for those 5-star reviews on all those major platforms. Guys, we can't do this without you. Please help us continue to grow. And like my partner said, come with that smoke in the comments, but we will see you next week when we
Run it back.
run it back.